My feet never lifted. Doop, 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 doop.
You can't.
See, our thing here at the Great Northern Sex Cast, Dr. Markie Twist, is that I always just turn it on and it's like people are just entering the room on us is how we do the show.
We're just randomly like, what is, what's exploding out of our heads before we start into the stuff that's on this lovely little outline here.
And I got your little beatbox going there.
Okay.
I got that down there. So that's how we started today. So Colleen Bertino, Kelly guest, and special guest today, Dr. Markie Twist. And I think I need to explain how she got here because it's like I'm so fascinated. This is one of those things that was like a stroke of bad luck for Alex and good luck for us.
I'm like, this is the most awesome. I'm like, we have a backup guest. This is I'm like this is fun.
How did that happen?
Yeah, it was amazing. So we've been communicating with Alex Ian Toffee for a couple of months, and his schedule is tough, and he's going to reschedule it. He called me yesterday. Oh my gosh, you guys! And I've never talked with him on the phone. We've only corresponded, so I know he's got a little bit of an accent, but you could not understand this voice. And he's like, I'm not feeling well. And I'm like, you think? Yeah. And I didn't even know him. And I mean, and he's like, but this is the bad news. And I'm like, oh my God, just feel better. I'm like, why are you worried about this? I'll deal. And then he's like, no, I found myself a replacement. And I'm like, you what? Because he was not well. So thank you. How do you guys know each other?
Right. So I know Alex Ian Toffee through actually another colleague. That's how this always seems to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Let's move you a little closer to your mic, hon. Yep.
How's that?
That's better.
Yeah,
okay.
you have to be uncomfortably close always.
Yeah, I'm also
things.
not a very tall human, so we have to adjust it. Right. So I met him through a colleague who actually is based out of Australia named Gavian Sara, who came here to the University of Wisconsin Stout and did a series of talks a couple of years ago. And was familiar with Alex. And so we all got together and had lunch in the cities. And then Alex and I stayed close friends. And now that I'm the coordinator for the sex therapy certificate program at UW Stout, Alex is one of our affiliate faculty of that program. So, and Alex and I also do a lot of research together.
Okay. Very cool. Well,
I was reading through the bio here and I'm like, oh, that's a lot. That's a smart person.
Yeah. Oh no. Pressure.
I know, right?
It was fascinating. We have a program coordinator of the Graduate Certificate in Sex Therapy Program, an associate professor in the Human Development and Family Studies Department and Marriage and Family Therapy Department. That must be a really long, when you do the letters. Yeah. I'm blanking on the word. Acronym. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. We acronym a lot.
You have an alphabet after your name.
Yeah, I do. The whole name is like an alphabet.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really fun. But I'm like, like I said, this is the best sub ever.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we talk about a lot here is communication. And it just seems like all of this just gets back to how to communicate.
Right. That's exactly it. Actually, the thing that I tell probably my students and clients and colleagues the most is that if you can't talk about sex, then you probably shouldn't be having it. So I would say that communication is probably
that's good.
The biggest thing that I mantra over and over again. So,
now, are you actually teaching classes at the university right now?
Yeah, not right now. We're on break.
Right, on break. Yeah.
Thank goodness, and I can spend time with you two and the listeners. I do teach. I teach an undergrad lifespan sexuality class, which has about 150 students in it a semester. And I have 10 teaching assistants that help with that class. And then I teach in our graduate family therapy class. And then I run our sex therapy program and I teach in that as well. So I'm constantly teaching.
Yeah. That's so, it's amazing. I don't know how long the sex therapy programs have been sort of growing, but it's like I've only recently in the last few years since we've been doing the show realized what a huge field this is becoming. Have you watched it expand over the year? Kind of give us the history as you see it.
Yep. So actually I entered the field of sexology, not sex therapy, because you can't do that without a credentialed master's degree and of course other credentials. But as an undergrad in the late 90s, I entered sexology. And at that time, there really was only one or two places in the whole country where you could go to school for sex education, sex therapy, sex counseling. And one was Widener University out of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And the other is a private institute, the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality out of San Francisco. And so your options were really, really limited. Now, I mean, now we're talking, 30 years later, 20, 30 years later, there still are not very many places where you can actually do specific graduate level education in sex therapy. But off the top of my head, I'd say there's about 5 that are credentialed. You've got Widener still, you have our program, which is a year old at UW Stout, and then Michigan has a program. And those are the big ones that people go to. In terms of like the field of sex therapy, people have really in the last decade, I think probably as sexual and gender diversity and technology really influences who we are as individuals and our relationships, people have really started coming in more and more. So I do couples therapy and individual therapy and family therapy. And more people are presenting with either sexuality or gender being the number one concern, or at least related to their communication problems. So the sex therapy field is actually growing. You're completely right. The training is growing, the demand is growing, and it's almost to the point where we almost can't keep up with it. We don't have enough people.
Wow.
We need more. We need you.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like there. It seems like just in general, any sort of therapy people can't keep up with, because, I mean, although there are a lot of really crappy things about social media, I think it has made a lot of folks realize they're not the only ones. And if someone else there that they can talk to, and then they realize, well, maybe I should talk to someone who knows more, or at least, has skills to help me navigate versus just a friend that you might talk to, or even an online discussion group, which is just, people who are having feelings, but what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would say that therapy in general, family therapy, relational therapy, individual therapy, the demand is growing. I do think some of that might be related to technology and just more awareness of oneself in relation to other people, certainly with the millennial generation. They apparently are reporting more anxiety than previous generations, in part because the way they're viewed constantly by their peers, and the pressure to be, kind of perfect. And they're struggling with that. So I do think that, yes, we're seeing a big demand for therapy that's different in the past, and the problems are tied in many cases to technology, or maybe just greater awareness of mental health issues. That's the other thing, is that I think we're becoming finally a little bit less sanist as a society and starting to recognize that, oh, guess what? Everybody struggles from time to time with mental and emotional and relational issues.
Yeah, because it just seems like I just recently had a friend who has gone public with the fact that she's going to be a she, and is going through there, and there's a blog, and she's changed her name, is going through there, and she's just out, and everyone's like, in our little group, of course, we've known this person for 30 years, and so we're like, woo, okay, if you get to be your authentic self, we're thrilled with that, but. I know, obviously this person is not young, right. But they're feeling that it's okay to be their authentic self now. We're really excited about that. I just don't, but there's a lot of different, they were just, people were like, well, here, I did this, or I talked to this person. I mean, there were just resources that people were throwing at her that she may not even known it existed.
Absolutely.
And, that certainly did not exist 20 years ago.
Absolutely. So that's one of the benefits to the technology, right? So we just kind of talked about here's how it might be problematic for people and contributing to mental health issues, or at least not necessarily helping one with their mental and emotional health. But I totally agree with you. The connectivity that now people, particularly in minoritized identities and experiences, have to recognize that I'm not alone in my gender queerness or in my transgender awareness or identity. And the fact that they then can tap into like professional resources, it's remarkable. I do think there's growing acceptance in that regard. And it's amazing. And your friend's story is of course one of courage, which I think more and more people are being inspired to live the way that they see themselves.
Well, just backing up just a little bit, Dr. Twist, how did you develop your leanings towards these specialties yourself? Like, what was your sort of path towards where you are today?
Right. It's a really great question. And I really believe that in order to understand, where someone is now, it's good to know where they come from as a therapist. I actually grew up in Alaska. out in the middle of nowhere in a town called Houston, which is not Texas. So
I was about to, sort of like there are more than one. There's only 3 Minneapolises, but there aren't too many Houstons either. You expect one in the middle of Alaska. I've learned something new.
Yeah.
Me too. I didn't know.
Yeah, there was 700 people, and it was 75 miles north of Anchorage, which, of course, is the city that almost everybody knows. And actually, it was about 15 miles north of Wasilla, which, of course, was made famous by a person whose name I'm not going to mention.
Yeah.
But you can see Russia from her house.
Right. So that was a very isolated growing up experience, and that made for a unique experience because ever since then, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're from Alaska? How weird!" So I started out weird already, and then my parents were very much like. Hippie people, which is sort of how you end up in Alaska in the 70s. And so they actually were very just wonderful, I think, about raising me in a legacy sexuality-wise that was very positive and not as a legacy of silence, which is oftentimes the clients I work with, the students I work with, even the students of millennial generation, the legacy they're raised with is one of silence. And if sex is talked about, then it's talked about in a way that's negative. So I didn't have that growing up experience. My parents were transparent and they were age appropriate in the questions that I had. And I always felt like I could talk to them about sexuality for sure. And so I actually thought I was going to be an attorney. I was obsessed with Night Court. Markie Post was on there. She was like the only other person that had my name. So.
Seemed very important.
I had a crush on her, whatever.
Oh, it was a great show.
Right, it was, right.
That was a funny show.
It was a great show. So when I got to college, I thought I was going to do that. And then I was a TA for a very large, and I went to school in Arizona, a very large sociology of sexuality class, 350 people. And I just decided one day after getting admitted into law school and getting ready to graduate that I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do crime stuff. What if I want to, do things that are criminal or something like speed? So I really don't want to be involved with the law. I was like, and really all I want to do is just talk about sex legitimately for a living. Like that's it. Because I'm so comfortable, right, compared to so many people. So like I already told you, there was no schools that really had that training. And so it was a very long path. It was a lot of like going through ASECT with the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, and then Quad-S, which is the Scientific Society for Sexuality Study, going to their workshops, going to their conferences. It was a lot of like reading of the small amount of literature that was out there. And then finally ending up in a family therapy program, which had an emphasis in sexuality, which was unheard of. And it was in Louisiana, even more unusual. And eventually when I got out of school and started doing work, this was the area that I specialized in. And the area I specialized in clinically was working with similar gender couples. So couples that, identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and anywhere kind of in the spectrum. And then after that, then my research went that direction and then teaching went that direction and so on and so forth. So
did you...
I blame my parents for my career.
I have so many questions.
I know it's my parents because I looked at them and said, can I have a job? So that's how that worked.
Well, did you ever start a practice or were you doing that simultaneously with all of this continuing education that you've done?
Yeah. So I've been seeing clients on and off since 1999.
Okay.
And right now I do consultant work out of the university clinic that I'm at.
Okay.
And I do supervision and then I do co-therapy. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you see any difference between, because I could easily make an argument. I mean, look around, turn on the television for the fact that pretty much most everybody could use some form of therapy, at least at some point in their lives, right? I think that that's almost the same as school, I mean, personally.
Yeah.
But so my question is, what percentage do you think of people end up in, pretty standard talk therapy situations where they really need someone more and they don't know it? And like, how would you tell somebody to discern that?
Like, they need more than You mean around sexuality issues? They need more than just a talk therapy person who doesn't have that specialized training.
Yeah. I mean, like, how do people get to the point where they might, because I don't think it would occur to a lot of people, because a lot of people still don't know you're out there. You know what I mean?
Right. I think it's a great question. What's